Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. I'm Josh Roller, and with me is Rob Peters. We hope you enjoyed the first show last week. Today we're going to be discussing the 3 races that took place on Racemas, the Monaco Grand Prix, the 103rd Indianapolis 500, and the Coca-Cola 600. Over 1,200 miles of racing in 14 hours. Hopefully you enjoyed them as much as we did. Before we get started, be sure to follow us on Twitter at RobPeters33 and at Roller_01 for myself. So that's at RPEETERS33 for Rob and at ROLLER_01 for myself. So, Rob, why don't we get started and let's talk about the Monaco Grand Prix.
I agree. I think it's a good way to start the day is to start with the first real race that we saw this weekend on Racemas. And Monaco, once again, proved to be, not the most exciting race out there, but still, an interesting race to watch, if not for strategy and if not for, a few more of the action-y parts that happened in the beginning of the race. Mostly I enjoyed the warm-up races, like the Formula 2 races. Those were really good. But it was real nice to kind of get the whole day started off with Monaco and see all that go. So I was really excited for it. I didn't realize that it was the 90th anniversary or something, they said, of Monaco. So that was really cool. I mean, and that really shows just how historical that race is. We've got 103 runnings now of Indianapolis. We've got 90 years of Monaco and 60 runnings of Charlotte Coca-Cola 600. So, just a great, wonderful day of racing that happened, and I was very happy with it. So, I wanted to double check here, and we were going to talk about Mercedes, how they dominated the race again. Lewis Hamilton, like I've always said, that man is perfect behind the wheel.
He's perfect.
I mean, you watch an onboard of him, and he looks like he's the most calm, cool, and collected guy ever, and he could be driving the worst race car imaginable, and he wouldn't even let you know it. So what I wanted to ask you real quick, what were some of your initial thoughts on Monaco?
Well, first off, the action, the race was determined by that early safety car that led to damage after Leclerc hit the barrier in Racemas. And pit strategy came down. You saw Verstappen, Vettel, and Bottas take hard compound tires, and you saw Hamilton take a medium compound, which I thought, I don't know how long this is going to last. You only have to pit once. You don't have to worry about fuel, so you're going to be walking into a long green flag run. So he would win. We're on 67 lap old tires. But Verstappen gave him one heck of a run. To me, when you look at Monaco, there's 3 real passing zones. You got the hairpin, and that's where Verstappen was making up all his time. You have the Nouvelle chicane where you can make a move on someone, and then we saw a Racemas. Well, the only point where Verstappen was making up any time, he was trying to go a little high into the hairpin and dive low and try to get around Hamilton on the gas. Never worked out for him. And Hamilton the entire time is complaining about these tires. They're not holding up. I can't do this. I don't know how much of that was a bluff because he did a pretty good job holding off Verstappen. And of course, I think it was with 3 laps to go, lap 76. Verstappen tries to get to him in the Nouvelle chicane. They make contact, and of course, no action was taken because Hamilton missed the corner, and so did Verstappen. And Verstappen might have been able to make an argument if he didn't open up the wheel so soon and actually try to get around that. Hey, he had an unfair advantage. And then the last 2 laps were pretty much very uneventful. And of course, going back to the pit stop, there was a 5-second penalty for Verstappen, so he was really trying to get by Hamilton to try to get out to that lead because of an unsafe release when he made contact with Bottas, and of course never did. Crosses the line second, scored 4th.
Yeah, I think Verstappen is probably one of the most fun guys to watch in the paddock right now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Leclerc gave him a big time run for his money earlier in that race when it just seemed like he was driving mad. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame Leclerc on that one. I think if my teammate qualifies way out in front of me like that, and I'm stuck. I don't even get out of Q2. I'm going to be a little bit upset too. I'm going to drive a little bit mad, or probably even more mad, because Leclerc knew he had a better car than probably everybody else down there in the midfield, and he was passing them and proving that he did indeed have the better car, passing them in very unconventional places too. I think that Monaco was a wonderful race for what it was. I mean, you have to kind of have your expectations a little bit lowered when you're watching Monaco. You kind of have to expect a few different things. You can't really expect to see as great of a race maybe as Formula One can provide, or even F2. But I still think that it's a wonderful race to watch. It's a beautiful track. It's a beautiful layout. It's difficult. It's a really hard race to run, and I think that's what makes the top 3, the top 4, top 5 really, that's like the cream of the crop right there in Formula One. If you can finish in the points really at Monaco, I think you've done something.
Just like Indianapolis, it's a champion circuit.
Yeah, I think it's a circuit that picks its winners, kind of like Indianapolis. Like Indianapolis picks its winners, and Monaco is the same way. It really just picks its winners. It picks who's the best driver out there, and we saw it. Hamilton was the best driver out there, and we could give a lot of credit to Mercedes all we want, but I mean, even when they screw up on strategy like that, give them mediums compound tires. I mean, Hamilton's still able to save those tires for pretty much most of the race.
Yeah,
almost the whole race, he was able to save those tires and hold off Verstappen and do some things that really are just Lewis Hamilton. I mean, the guy is probably one of the best racers out there right now, and he's in his prime. And I could talk about Hamilton all I want, but, no matter how you feel about him, you got to give the guy some respect for just going out there and just being really good.
Yeah.
And he's just continued to show off that, and I don't think it's the car either. People can say that it's the car, but
I think you could take out any car in that field, and he's gonna make it 10 positions better.
Absolutely. I mean, if he's not winning, he's on the podium in another car. Or if he's not on the podium, he's scoring points. I don't think there's a situation where Lewis Hamilton finishes the race in like 13th.
No.
I don't think that's something that's going to happen if you put him in, say, like a Renault or something. I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, I don't think he's going to go to Renault. I don't think he'd ever leave Mercedes. No. He has no reason to. He has no incentive. Mercedes has no incentive to get rid of him. He's still, their best guy. So he really did a wonderful job out there, and it was a really, really, really good race for Monaco from a Monaco standpoint too.
Yeah, the one thing I noticed, and this is nothing new in Formula One, but I wrote down here, Kimi Räikkönen went 46 laps on tires. Romain Grosjean went 51 laps on soft tires. I just think Formula One could be so much more interesting if you could get one more pit stop in there and change tires. And they didn't have tires that lasted this long on a street circuit, nonetheless. And that bothered me a little bit. And it also made me wonder, like, obviously Hamilton's running, I think, a little bit harder than the Haas cars were in the midfield were to try and stay ahead of Verstappen. So those medium compound tires might be going away a little quicker than the soft compound in another situation. But there's no way a tire should last 51 laps of a 78-lap race.
No, and I saw that last year when they ran that race at the French Grand Prix last year. I think guys made it on one stop on what was considered to be the soft tire.
Yeah.
And I said, even if there are softer tires than the soft tire,
yeah,
it's crazy that a tire labeled soft is able to last the entire race almost. Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys only needed one pit stop. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't mind pit strategy. I like pit strategy. I think that's part of what makes Formula One so entertaining is the pit strategy. But like you said, it could be so much better if Pirelli tires actually degraded like they're supposed to. And I don't think that Pirelli wants them to degrade. I don't know if the FIA wants them to degrade as much.
No tire. I mean, you want to be out there. Pirelli tires last longer. That's what this advertising standpoint is. But is it actually the best product for the race? Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too when we talk about the Coke 600.
Yeah, and actually, if we want to go ahead and run into the Coke 600 right now, we can actually shift gears a little bit. We've been talking about Monaco, but I do, we'll talk about Monaco a little bit later in the podcast. But I think that it's time for our featured paint scheme of the week, and since we're talking about the Coca-Cola 600, Josh, your featured paint scheme of the week is one that is a good one for Memorial Day, which was yesterday. We're recording this on Tuesday. Took a day off for Memorial Day. I did. You didn't, unfortunately. You had to work. But so, Josh, tell us who's your featured paint scheme of the week.
Well, this all kind of started with on the Dale Jr. podcast. They were featuring Navy SEAL John Tummelson over a couple minute segment over there. Junior's PR guy Mike Davis was talking with his sisters. And I really fell in love with the paint scheme because of his story. He was killed along with 31 other Americans, 30 soldiers and a dog, and when their helicopter was shot down in Afghanistan. And on this paint scheme, it has 31 stars on it. Of course, John Tumbleson's name is on the windshield, as were the other 40 cars in the field. All had a fallen service member's name, and I really just liked it. Just the way they went about it, designing the car, and it is a good story if you can find a good story out of that. So that's the way I liked it. I did like too. You'll mention the sister car here in a second, but I did like Bubba Wallace's Orange Vanilla Coke, even though I'm getting tired of the commercials.
Well, those commercials can be as annoying as they want, but I tell you something, Orange Vanilla Coke is a wonderful, wonderful invention. I did not realize how good it was until I actually tried it, and I was like, man, they nailed it here. So I'm going to talk about, and speaking of Coca-Cola, since it is Coca-Cola 600, we're talking about Orange Vanilla Coke now. I'm going to talk about my favorite paint scheme, and my favorite paint scheme, unapologetically, was Austin Dillon's, because I am a sucker for a black and red number 3 car.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't care who's driving it. I think it's fine that Austin Dillon drives it. I would love to see Austin Dillon drive more Dale Earnhardt throwbacks. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of older fans might be angry about it, but me personally, I see how much interaction Austin Dillon really had with Dale Earnhardt when he was a young boy, and I think that he's just as qualified as... He's probably one of the only qualified guys to drive a car like that's not named Earnhardt.
Yeah,
I
agree.
So I loved that car. I thought it was a beautiful car. It was probably my favorite car of the whole weekend. And there were a lot of really, really good looking paint schemes out there. I had to give... I'm not a huge fan of camo, but the way they did Jimmy Johnson's car was just perfect.
That's probably the best camo car since Junior's camo car.
Oh,
back
for
in
real?
Was that 06 or 07? I can't remember now.
I think it was 07.
07?
And yeah, oh man, I think that was just a beautiful car. But I think for me that won it was Austin Dillon's car. I was really hoping he would win that race again, but he got caught up in an accident, which was really unfortunate because I loved that car. And what was worse was in that accident too was Clint Boyer's car. And I know it's not a patriotic scheme at all,
but the Pete car does look good.
Blue and black. Like I was talking about last week about how much I love that blue, white, black kind of look, like a Max Chilton's car. Mm-hmm. That Pete car from Clint Boyer was just incredible. It was a beautiful, beautiful looking car as well. So really, and we've seen that many times. The Coke 600, the All-Star Race, always have wonderful, wonderful paint schemes. They almost always bring their best stuff, and that was something that I really, really enjoyed to look at. So,
and the Rick Ware cars too. Before we move on, the Rick Ware cars, I took me a while to figure out what they were doing, and then like, oh, they're after famous planes. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the SR-71 got tagged by someone and hit the wall there, but when Bailey Curry, but that was sad because that one hurt too.
It's Rick Ware Racing, man. They're never gonna get any better. I mean, they're one of those cars that's just gonna putz around at the end of the field forever.
Respect for going out there with 3 cars, though.
You got to give them creds for that. I think I gotta give them a lot of credit because they run a lot. They do run drivers that are pretty decent. Well,
and they took a shot basically at a third car to get a little bit more money out of the prize. So hey, there's not someone out there filling that 40th spot. We'll bring a third car and run it and take some extra money home with us.
I mean, if it fills the field, I guess that's what matters. I mean, I would like to see those cars maybe start working their way up to getting better, because there was a period of time where, start and park teams got to be really, really good at one point. Mm-hmm. I think if Tommy Baldwin Racing, started as a start and park team in 2009 and ended up actually fielding some pretty decent cars and helping out some decent drivers. Dave Blaney was there, J.J. Yaley was there.
It's a slow process, but he did it.
Yeah, he did it really well, and it's to the point where they were running, I think, Alex Bowman and Regan Smith like full time there for a while. Mm-hmm. That's what I wish Rickware Racing would turn into. I don't think it's going to happen. The same goes for Premium Motorsports. I don't think that's going to happen either. As good as their cars and paint schemes might look, I mean, I just wish that they would have more of an opportunity to run up at the front, and a lot of that comes with effort. And, this might be controversial because I don't know the ins and outs of how that works, but it just doesn't seem like there's enough effort going into that team. They're fine with running 30th, 36th, 30th on back, all day, and it's just a shame to see something like that. But I don't want to get into too negative stuff right now. I think it's time to talk about the Indianapolis 500 because that was probably one of the biggest events, arguably, of the weekend.
Day 2, or race 2 of Racemas.
Yeah. Right. We saw a great crowd out there.
Great crowd.
Obviously, it was a little spotty. Doug Bowles was not ultra positive that it was going to be as good as last year, which is a little bit concerning to me, but he did say that the walk-up was still about what they projected. So, I can't complain all that, but definitely
250,000 seats is a lot to sell out. And then, I mean, that's just something that, and that's the one race there, currently, that can do that.
It's really the only racetrack, period, that still needs as many grandstands as it has. Mm-hmm. I think, if it wasn't pulling in 250,000 or even 200,000, I don't really think, you'd have much of a need for maybe like the Turn 2 grandstand. Maybe the Turn 2 suite, but, and I don't think Turn 3 would be would even be there for the most part. I think that you just have, grandstands on the front in the first and fourth turns, and that would probably be about it.
Yeah.
But major props to Indianapolis for continuing to promote the race, because I saw promotions out here all the way back in March starting. Yeah. Hey, get ready for the Grand Prix. Hey, get ready for Indianapolis 500 qualifying. Get ready for the race. It's all coming up, and pushing it hard on radio, on television.
And it delivered.
NBC was up way more than I projected they would be. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but they really, really did a great job, I think, with the overall production of the event. I have a couple of nitpicks that I'm going to make real quick, though. But overall, I don't want this to sound like I'm saying NBC's coverage was bad. Mm-hmm. But I do think that the pre-race show ran way too long. I know that they were making a big deal about how they were having a 3-hour pre-race show. But how many people watch a 3-hour pre-race show?
Not too many. Not too many people who aren't watching it on the local TV side.
Right.
Nationally, not a whole lot of people are going to be watching it.
I didn't start watching it until Monaco finished, honestly. Yeah. I didn't even care about it until Monaco finished. And I don't think I was the only person that was like that. I can't imagine that anybody who watches all 3 races tuned out of Monaco and decided it would be a fun idea to just watch this pre-race show instead. I don't think that happened.
They had viewers. Adam Stern tweeted yesterday, NBC earned 5.4 million viewers between TV and digital streaming, which is how I watched it. Mm-hmm. I bought the IndyCar Pass to watch it from home, and they were up 11% from ABC's last year. They had 4.91 million. A little up slightly from 17, but down from 16, which had 6 million viewers. But that was the 100th running too.
Right. You have to understand
and plus they had it broadcast for the Indy markets too, so you have people who are watching from home in that sense as well.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the blackout a little bit too. Is a lot of people complain about the blackout all the time, and it's probably one of the most controversial things. It's something that I feel like a lot of people want to see go away. But I've always been on the different feeling. I feel very strongly that if the 500 is not sold out, there's really no reason for the Indianapolis market to get to see it.
Yeah, go to the track and buy a ticket.
It's not even that expensive. Yeah. I mean, I think about it. It's $20 to park, $40 to get in, and I know for some people who might just be really impoverished and stuff, they might say, "Oh, that's too much for me. I can't take that." But realistically speaking, I mean, you can save up $60 throughout the week, even if you make peanuts. I mean, if you really, really want to go see the race and it means that much to you, there's no reason why you shouldn't be there.
Well, it's like the same issue. But if you're the one complaining about it's not on TV or the stands are empty, well, you're part of the problem if you're there.
Yeah,
and that's
the problem is always people complaining about stands being empty are always the people who don't go to the races.
Yes.
They don't go to the races. And it's not like I think about how many sporting events that I go to in a year. I think about a baseball ticket. A baseball game is maybe about between $8 to $20. I think about a basketball game. I've gotten tickets to Pacers games for as low as $6 before. But I've also gotten tickets to the Pacers playoff games for, somewhere around $30 before. And those are, nobody has a problem paying those prices. And I'm always looking at cheap prices. I think about football games too. NFL tickets are unbelievably expensive. Yet people buy those all the time for the games, and they have games almost every week. Mm-hmm. And you see that. Like, I think ticket prices, with however frequent the team plays, like basketball prices, you'll see them go down. With NFL prices, they're higher because the team has to make more revenue on just this one event every week.
Eight home games in 17 weeks.
Whereas the Indianapolis Motor Speedway says, hey, we've got the biggest event in the entire world that you can go see for $40, which is cheaper than an NFL ticket. It'll get you a decent seat at an NBA game, and it'll probably get you behind home plate, depending on where you sit at a baseball game. So, I sit there and I think of that, and I'm like, there's no reason then. There's no reason why someone who wants to watch the race can't be there that day. I mean, obviously, I shouldn't say there's no reason. There are legitimate reasons. Say, like, illness, disability, problems like that. I understand that. Or maybe just not saving up for it that day. I understand that. But now I think we've kind of figured out that there's workarounds for that. The Indy Star put out a story during the race telling people, oh, hey, by the way, guys, if you log in to NBC Sports, the streaming service with your cable provider, it doesn't geolocate you, so you can watch the race through that.
There you go.
So if you had, a phone, a computer... I just wasted
$40 is what you're telling me.
Well, you could watch it on NBC Sports Gold, too.
Yeah.
So if you bought the Gold Pass back in, April and March...
The day before, like I did.
Right. You still got to watch the race, too. So there are workarounds. Yeah. But, I think it's one of those situations where it shouldn't be broadcasted for free on free over-the-air TV. I think that's something that, let's black it out, because it amazes me that more NFL games aren't blacked out.
Yeah.
It amazes me that... Well,
I had some games, yes, but we're here in Indianapolis, and they fill up that stadium most of the time. So I think they have I don't know if they have a threshold or something. I don't think they're ever going to black out Indianapolis home game.
No,
kind of deal.
I don't think so either.
But I get more that's kind of the opposite thing. I get more frustrated when I can't watch my Cowboys. Instead, I'm stuck watching the Lions and the Bears. I'm like, why am I watching this game right now? It's not good at all. And the Cowboys are playing the Redskins. I want to watch that one.
You tried being a Seahawks fan? We never get them here.
That's rough. Yeah,
I never get them here. I have had to shell out money for Sunday Ticket, the streaming service, for last couple of years, just to be able to watch one game a week. And then some of the times they play on primetime schedules, and then I'm thinking, well, why am I even paying for it this week now? But you could also talk about situations like that being, of an NFL game maybe sees 50,000 people, which is probably more akin to your standard NASCAR race, whereas the Indianapolis 500 is 250,000. Still,
plus the infield.
Still, it's $40. Yeah, it's still $40. I don't understand why you're not there if you have the means to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have the means to be there, you have the money, and you're not there, there's really no one to blame but yourself. Yeah. You should be there. You should be there. It's part of a tradition. It's part of race day tradition. And I know a lot of people say, oh, but the parking. Oh, but the crowds. Oh, but this
carpool. I mean, how many people? I mean, if you can get enough people, carpool. They only charge you $20 for one car, not per person.
I know people who park downtown and rode a bird scooter all the way into the track.
There you go.
I mean,
how much? It's a level of commitment to. But let's move on a little bit so we don't.
I don't want to waste too much time talking about that
because we had a pretty good race there at the end. 200 laps, and it didn't disappoint. In the final.
200 laps, and it all led up to the last 20. And I thought it was a wonderfully driven race by Simon Pagenaud, and I think it was a drive that pretty much told me if this guy does not win this race, it'll be the biggest travesty of the last, several years. I mean, it'll remind me of like a Michael Andretti situation where he led the most laps, dominated the race, and then didn't win. And, but Pagenaud doesn't have a curse underneath him, and he's driving for Penske, who now has, 18? 18 now, 17 then. I didn't think anything bad was going to happen to Pagenaud, really. But I definitely was thinking Rossi was going to get him there.
Well, and I think, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and it was a story during the race. Chevy had the power, Honda had the fuel mileage. Well, we had that caution come out. Rossi just makes the pass. There's a 25-ish laps. I can't remember now how many laps there were left. He makes the pass. Well, Simon's in fuel conservation mode. Well, then you see Ray Hall and Bourdais make contact. They wreck. A couple of the cars get collected. That's off the table. Fuel mileage is off the table now. And you see Pagenaud dives down into turn 1 on the restart because he knows I don't have to worry about fuel anymore. He takes the leads for a few laps, and Rossi comes back. And Rossi's leading on lap 199, going down the backstretch. Pagenaud makes the move, takes the lead, doesn't look back. And he doesn't yield again. And all
that swerving down the backstretch on the last lap to try and prevent Rossi from grabbing a draft was like the gutsiest thing I've ever seen. Because if something went wrong there, if he caught wind there, or if he ran over debris or something,
he's not only collecting possibly Rossi but also Takuma, and those other cars behind him, and wrecking on the backstretch is not good. No, wrecking an Indy car is never good. But the thing that I noticed too was that Pagenaud, when he got past, was able to suck back up to Rossi a couple turns quicker than Rossi could. But that last shot, Rossi gave it all he could. Of course, I think I called him a daredevil.
Oh, for sure.
On Twitter, and he said, well, he's there's no limits for him in that car.
No, I don't think
the limit are the walls for him at this point.
Alexander Rossi pretty much has proven time and time again that everything that we thought about him in 2016 is wrong.
Yeah.
We all thought that he was a guy who didn't care much for IndyCar, a guy who didn't care much for oval racing, a guy who really was just drug here, kicking and screaming. And
now it's his home.
Now he's like, I want to win this race again more than I want to win anything else in my life.
He was so disappointed.
Oh my gosh, he was absolutely. He said, I heard several times. He was so angry. The passion that I saw, like, even if he did win that, I would have been probably a little bit upset for Simon.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Not going to lie. I would probably have been a little bit upset for Simon, but I wouldn't have minded because I think Rossi drove his heart out.
And he said nothing else matters here except winning. And
he's right.
And that's absolutely right.
Nobody unless you're in a photo finish, nobody remembers who finished second.
I think people will remember who finished second on this one maybe for a while.
Right.
Because that was a heck of a drive and a heck of a finish.
Right. There's a few races, few 500s that I can remember who finished second. Notable ones, I think about 2002. Paul Tracy, you finished second, get over it. I think about 2006. Marco Andretti finished second. I think about 2014. Elio Castroneves finished. I think about 2017 when Elio Castroneves finished second.
2015 when Will Power
did finish second.
Are battling back and forth.
How could you forget all the second places Carlos Munoz has had as well? Who also was a shame that he wasn't in this race. Yeah. Someone really dropped the ball there, not giving Munoz a ride. Because that guy has probably one of the best records in Indianapolis, and that guy probably wants to win this race more than anybody else. Probably more than Alexander Rossi wanted to win it while sitting on the couch. I think we saw a great race, and I wanted to talk about something, and I mentioned this to you earlier. But on Media Day, I love Media Day. I think it's one of the coolest things that IMS does, because it kind of gives you an opportunity to just walk around. It's like you could just walk up to the drivers and ask them any question you want, and they're all available. No more trying to make, some kind of appointment with a PR guy and trying to talk to them. No more, walking up into them in the garage area cold. You don't have to do that. You could just go to Media Day, and that's when a lot of the pit reporters do that. That's when a lot of guys do that. So I went up and I asked a bunch of the young drivers and a bunch of the veteran drivers, what kind of race we could have expected. Now, this happened on Thursday, so it was a day before Carb Day. And I was really interested in knowing what kind of a race we were going to be able to see.
From a passing aspect?
From a passing aspect, and from, do these cars handle a little bit better, or do they handle a little bit worse with the wicker bills that we've put on the front and rear wings? Things like that. And it was really interesting to get kind of a mixed bag of answers there. I talked to some of the younger guys like Matthias Leist and Jordan King, who, by the way, I found out is a cricket fan. So him and I are probably going to be watching the Cricket World Cup, not together, but simultaneously. So we're looking forward to that. He predicted an England and India final match, and I think he's probably right on for there. But I'm not going to talk too much about cricket, because how many of you guys listening even care? But I asked him, certain things like that, and both Laced and Jordan King had kind of the same answer, where they felt like it was going to be a better race if it was hot and slick, or if the sun was out. Whereas a lot of the veterans, and speaking up to them, like J.R. Hildebrand, not Felix Rosenquist, I was thinking about his teammate Scott Dixon, and Sage Karam, guys who've run multiple races. Karam and Karam might be younger, but
he's got a few 500s.
He's got 500s under his belt. He knows how this car is going to react, and so I asked him. I asked Sage. I was like, you're coming from the back of the grid. How do you think, or do you think you're going to be able to have opportunities to move up through the field with this new package? And he said, yeah, absolutely. He said, I think that. If the temperatures are right, I think it's going to be real easy to pass, because he said he felt real good about his car on the Monday practice.
Really?
And Pippa Mann was the same way, where she said, I think that the changes have made passing to be a lot easier. Obviously, she wasn't in the race last year to really kind of gauge what that was going to be like, but she did, run in packs in drafting.
And she's smart enough. She watched the race, and she's
right.
smart enough to talk about people who were in it.
And so she kind of knew, she kind of got an idea of what she was going to expect, and she said the same thing. She was like, hey, I think this race is going to be a good one. She said, I think from where we're starting, I think if we have decent pit strategy and catch a couple of breaks on cautions, we should be right there when it ends. And sure enough, she was. She finished 16th. That was her best finish at Indianapolis. And I just want to say congratulations to her, first and foremost. But secondly, I want to make the note that, J.R. Hildebrand, who I always talk to, because, I found out he teaches at Stanford.
When you told me that, I was a little shocked. And I was like, what?
Well, he has a degree from MIT, and that's one of the reasons why I like talking to J.R. Hildebrand, because he knows probably more about what's going on from the engineering standpoint, and he can tell me, because I'll ask him these questions, and then he tells me in a way that I can understand, and then I can put it into layman's terms.
So for the NASCAR fans listening to this, he's the Ryan Newman of the car garage.
Yes, I think J.R. Hildebrand would be the guy to talk to. It's just a shame that someone like him doesn't have a full-time ride anymore, because he deserves one. Yeah. And I don't care what anybody says. People can say, oh, he didn't do that great with Carpenter, oh, he didn't do that great with John Barnes, but the dude's a consistent driver. And we remember him for crashes, but the thing about it is he doesn't actually crash all that much. It just so happens that the crashes that he's had have been memorable ones. Yeah. But J.R. Hildebrand told me, hey, if track conditions are perfect on Sunday and we don't get rain, I think we're going to be able to pass a lot, and we're going to see crazy stuff. And what ended up happening was kind of what both of them said. Like the young guys said, which was it was going to be better when the sun was out. But then the older guys said it was going to be better when there's cloud coverage. So we kind of saw both. Where it didn't matter what the track temperature was. It didn't matter what the track conditions were. We saw a good race. We saw plenty of passing. And I think that was what was so great about the last 20 laps, is that realizing that, okay, this car is now punching a big enough hole in the air that drafting can happen. But not so much that it becomes a crapshoot at the end, like we've seen the last several years, from 2012 to 2015, where guys are making slingshot passes on the very last lap. Finally being able to see a race where it was a lot more kind of like the 97 to 2011 era kind of IRL Dallara, mixed in with the big-time drafting of the DW12 and the Aero kits.
And there was only, after the restart, Alexander led for a few laps, and then passing about 5 laps later, It led for 10, and then you had the back and forth there with a couple laps left.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right here. It says Pagano took the lead on lap 187, then Rossi passed him back on 189, to which Pagano passed him again on 199 and held the lead to the end. So, Pagano led the most laps, led 116 laps, and they came over the PA and the media center to let us all know, hey, by the way, this was the most laps led so far since Dario Franchitti in 2010. And I was like, well, man, if Pagano doesn't win this thing, it'll be a farce.
And I was looking like that when we talked about it a little earlier before that crash, and that was you would feel for the guy because he has had a great May, drove like a champ in that GP, and of course he is a series champion.
He's now the second guy to sweep the month of May.
Yeah.
And I thought for a long time, we were going to be talking about that being a difficult task to accomplish. But now we've seen guys that are just so good at road and oval courses. People like Will Power and Simon Pagano, who both started out only racing on road courses. They were even teammates in Champ Car in 2007.
And you're going to sweep the month of May. You're going to have to beat Will and Simon.
Yeah,
that's the way it's come down to. Now it didn't look like it this year. Without the rain, we might have had that streak in, but nonetheless, it was Simon and Will who are mastering the GP at this point in time, and I love the reaction to it. That's my favorite part. Simon breaks protocol,
right?
Parks it on the yard of bricks, and he shares that moment with the fans.
Yeah.
And that's what's really putting his hand on his helmet. You just can't believe what's going on, and who was it interviewing? I think it was Marty Snyder trying to interview him. Take your helmet off. Take your helmet off. Take your helmet off. Well, no, they want to get him to the victory lane.
Yeah.
They're trying to pull a NASCAR, and they want an interview on the finish line,
which is something that needs to be done away with.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I think that the front stretch interview after NASCAR race is probably the dumbest thing we've ever done.
Well, it's a double interview. The second interview is so muted after that.
Well, now we don't even have a victory lane reporter. We just put an earpiece in the ear and then have them talk to whoever's hosting the pre-race. Come on, don't do that. I want to go. I want to hear from the third and second place drivers, and then I want to hear from the winner, and that's how I want to hear it. But I think that was something that's amazing that Pagano was able to do, was really celebrate that moment with the fans, because I don't think we've seen that at Indianapolis since Helio Castroneves won last.
Yeah, I was about to say.
10 years ago, when he climbed the fence. People love that, and that's what I think when Helio climbed the fence the first time in 2001, I think that's what really made people fall in love with Helio.
And it gives him that picture opportunity. You're close, you're sharing it there. It reminded me when Gordon got out and after the 04 Brickyard, stands there and he's like, yes, I just won this thing.
That was my first race.
For a fourth time. and so that makes it, I think the fans are appreciated.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes in these situations, when you talk about protocol and a race like the Indy 500, the fans need to be a part of it too. And that day on Sunday, Simon made them, at least on the front stretch, a part of that. And that's what's neat, and that's what you hope to see. Not just a good finish, but an opportunity to be close to that experience when you buy that ticket on the front stretch there by the start-finish line. So
every fan on that front stretch is going to have a memory.
Oh, yeah.
Now, a memory that no one else can take away from is celebrating that win with Simon. Yeah. And I don't know how many of them were Rossi fans, because I'm going to assume that there was a ton.
There was a lot of Rossi fans cheering. The stands were erupting by the.
I saw a good number of Swedish flags out there too.
Well, you had to.
Did not expect that. I don't know how many of them were sold at the Fisher's IKEA. I'd like to find out. But it was a shame that Ericsson and Rosenqvist couldn't bring back Kenny Brack, because this was the first time, I believe, that Swedish drivers had been in the race since Kenny Brack. And Kenny Brack last made a start in 2005, I believe.
There's another country of people cheering for the 500 now.
So now they had two Swedes in there, and both of them unfortunately failed to finish the race. But I saw a ton of Swedish flags out there. And that was pretty neat to see, because it's nice to see that Ericsson and Rosenqvist are very popular drivers, because Ericsson is already quickly becoming a very popular driver. I just hope he catches some better luck.
Yes.
Because he had some really bad luck. He had bad luck this month of May.
He was having a pretty decent race before the pit road incident. And that's one thing I wanted to mention before we moved on. There were some pit road incidents.
Yes, lots of pit road incidents.
Obviously, we had a very, very double near accident with when Elio hit James Davison, the tire gets punted, almost went on, hit saved by the wall there, and pit road, and almost bounced on the track, and luckily stayed within the confines of pit road because that could have been very
terrifying.
Bad. And then the Jordan King incident, his crew member is okay after getting a tire basically shunted into his side. So glad to hear he had non-life-threatening injuries before he even left the track, which was good to hear. So we wanted to make sure we made note of that. So on to our upshift downshift segment. We're going to try to keep it a little tighter this week, but we'll try to have a little fun with this still. So the first one, Simon Pagenaud's sweep of the month of May secures the 2016 IndyCar champion at least another season with Team Penske.
Oh, that's an upshift. That's an upshift into sixth gear. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that guy is going to get a contract renewal. I mean, once you win the 500 for the captain, he kind of treats you well for life. And we've seen that with Elio Castroneves. We've seen that with Gilles de Ferran. We've seen that with, a lot of his Al Jr., Emerson. We've seen that with a lot of his former winners. And I think that I don't really think that there's any doubt anymore that Pagenaud isn't going to return with Team Penske. I think the guy we should be wondering about still is probably going to be Elio. But I think Roger would be a fool not to bring Elio back for the 500. I think Roger should run Elio part-time, but that's not the point of the question. So I'm going to what do you think? What do you think, Josh? Are you going to upshift or downshift on that one?
I was definitely worried about Simon at the beginning of the year. I mean, he went winless last year. I didn't think winning the GP gave him any security at all. Yeah, it helps him a little bit. But winning the 500, like you said, because there was talk about Power last year. Mm-hmm. Is Power going to be back? He hasn't won the 500 yet. So upshift for sure.
I think now we put all the pressure on Joseph Newgarden because he's the only driver in the Penske stable who has not won at Indianapolis.
Wait, well, I think there might have been someone in that NBC booth who thought he had yesterday, but that's a whole other thing. But
I already mentioned that NBC's coverage, while good, had some problems, and commentary was up there. Paul Tracy, after the way he treats this track, there's no reason that guy should have been up there calling that race. Far too big of an honor for someone who has about as much respect for the track as probably he does, a bug on the street. I mean, come on.
All right, so the class of 2020 for the NASCAR Hall of Fame was announced this past week. 1980 Daytona 500 winner Buddy Baker is one of those, four-time Cup Series champion owner Joe Gibbs, 2000 Cup champion and 91 Busch Series champion Bobby Labonte is the third. Three-time Cup champion as an engineer and 19-time Cup Series winner as a crew chief Waddell Wilson, and three-time Cup Series champion Tony Stewart are the nominees. Mm-hmm. You saw the list of drivers and crewmen and figures of the sport who didn't get in. Are you upshifting or downshifting on this class?
I'm upshifting. I have no problem with the class. I mean, I think the thing about the NASCAR Hall of Fame, for me, is that it's still growing. And I think we're all really upset right now because, certain people aren't in, or certain people, aren't nominated just yet. There's a lot of people want to see nominated and get into the class, but we've only had, what is this, like the 9th or 10th class that we've inducted? 11th class. This is the 11th class. So, it's not going to be like football or baseball or basketball, those Hall of Fames, because those have been around for so long. The NASCAR Hall of Fame's only been around since, I believe, 2010. Yeah,
that was the first one with Earnhardt, the Francis, Petty, and I believe Junior Johnson.
So I think that the drivers that got in were worthy drivers, and crew members and owners and people. Tony Stewart was probably one of the most worthy ones. I think
he was probably the only lock. I think you could make the argument that Joe Gibbs, because I'm going to upshift, but I'm not going to upshift up to sixth gear like you like.
No,
like yeah. I'm going to upshift. I think Sam Ard. I would like to see Sam Ard get in myself.
I think Sam Ard will get in.
I think he'll get in, and this is where we'll have a little. I'll save my piece. Mm-hmm. I think we got to the point where I like to see them do a baseball route. You need so many votes to get in because there's so many people I think who have deserved it in, and NASCAR was so late to the game getting in this Hall of Fame that it would be nice to see it grow a little bit faster. While I like what they're kind of doing, I would like to see it grow because there's so many people in the sport that I think people have forgotten about, and we're at that cusp where people who reported and were witnessing races in the 60s. Mm-hmm. we're unfortunately losing them.
Yeah.
And those people themselves are, we just lost David Pearson this past winter. So
we need to honor them while we still can.
Yeah, exactly. Get them in and not allow them to be posthumously inducted. So I think the percentage way of that shifting up slightly. The class is good. All these people are deserving. So upshift slightly. I think. Are you shifting up high or low on that one?
Well, I'm just gonna upshift. It's a good class. I think that the people who people want to see get in will get in.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. And I always look at the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and I think all Hall of Fames should be the same way I believe baseball does it, or football, I think it is, where you can't tell the story of the sport without a certain person. I think that's how the Football Hall of Fame works. I feel that very strongly with NASCAR, where you can't, like the first class, for example, you couldn't tell the story of NASCAR without those people.
It's a great five.
And I think still, right now, we're running down it. You can't tell the NASCAR story without Tony Stewart. You just can't. I mean, this guy came in from the ranks of USAC and from the IRL and just started winning.
Mm-hmm.
And won 3 championships, started his own team now.
And won a championship.
And won a championship with that. I mean, the only thing Stewart didn't have was a Daytona 500, but at that point, who cares? Because he's won at Indianapolis, and I think that meant more to Tony Stewart than Daytona ever did.
Yeah.
So I'm not even all that upset about it.
You mentioned this a second ago. Helio Castroneves will return for his 20th Indianapolis 500 in 2020 in an attempt to capture a record-tying 4th 500 victory. He told NBC Sports' Bruce Martin that he hopes to do that. Do you believe he will, upshifting, or do you think he won't with a downshift?
I think he will. I think that Roger Penske would be almost foolish not to let him back. And I know that's probably a crazy thing to say about the captain, because you don't want to really question any of his moves, but...
And he didn't want to talk about it.
Helio has done immense and amazing things for Roger Penske's organization.
Very much.
And I think Roger Penske owes it to Helio Castroneves to give him as many opportunities to get his 4th win as possible. Because Helio Castroneves is the only driver right now that has a shot at getting a 4th win.
Mm-hmm.
You take him out of the equation, you kind of lose some of that appeal.
Mm-hmm.
People want to see someone get their 4th win, and because it's so hard, and Helio's come so close the last several years, and it's not, I think the race on Sunday was just a fluke for Helio, mainly because, quite honestly, I don't think he has as much experience as he needs to. I think Roger Penske needs to run him in a part-time schedule, and a schedule that doesn't interfere with his IMSA duties, because people could talk about Helio getting old all they want, but the fact of the matter is, the guy's still got it.
Mm-hmm.
He's still got it. Takuma Sato is 42 years old, and he finished 3rd in that race. So I don't want to hear anything about age being a problem. Roger Penske should bring him back. I'm hopeful that he will. I'm going to upshift on it based on my gut feeling.
I'm gutful, upshifting on 20th. However, I wouldn't be surprised if it's his last. Because we talked about that. If he's not running a part-time schedule, that deterioration of the rhythm, being in the car consistently, because I don't know if the GP is enough to get you going and get that rhythm back. Mm-hmm. And if you're not in these cars, I think it'd be nice for him to run Pocono. It's not necessarily halfway between Indy each year, but that'd be a good place. Run Texas.
Oh, I'd love to see him run Texas.
Run some of these ovals for sure, and get used to turning left every lap.
Because he's going to be fine running on a road course.
Yeah.
Because he does that with IMSA. So running him on the GP is really just getting him familiarized with the car. But what they need to do is keep him running the oval races so that he continues to learn. Because, last year, Helio came in and he had, several races less experience than everyone else did with that new car.
And he did...
He did okay, but, obviously, those cars last year were very unstable, and they caught out a lot of good veterans.
Caught him out,
and Tony Kanaan, and Danica Patrick, Ed Jones, drivers that probably should have finished the race way better than they did. Mm-hmm. But just the matter of the fact is that the cars just didn't handle as well last year. But I think Helio should come back. I think Roger Penske should bring him back. And so I'm going to upshift on that.
Yeah, I'm upshifting too. Ricky Stenhouse was tagged in the rear by Kyle Busch with 15 laps to go in Stage 1 of Sunday's Coca-Cola 600. He spun through the infield grass, the synthetic turf, which they replaced with the natural grass last year, not natural gas. That'd be a little weird. His car was not torn up via the splitter digging into the grass like at most other tracks. Should tracks invest in synthetic turf for their infield or ball field grass sections?
It's an interesting question, and I think right now, the way NASCAR is going, I think the answer should absolutely be yes. And I think I've seen a couple of situations there, too, where I think it would work very well in other forms of motorsport as well. I say that because if you can create a surface that looks pretty like that, but allows cars to glide over it in the event of an accident and not tear up the car, perfect. I say we do it. So I'm going to upshift on that because I think from a safety standpoint, I think it's perfect. I don't think that we should, pave the tracks, pave over those tracks, because I think that just makes it look ugly.
Yeah.
I think that makes tracks look ugly. Like Indianapolis without grass would just look ugly.
Yeah.
Texas, and especially some of those 1.5 mile races. I think about Texas. I think if Texas did away with their infield grass, I think it would just look like an ugly track.
Yeah.
It would just be gross. So, I think that, they should keep them, and I think it would be safer. Because I don't think that the cars, the wheels, the splitters, whatever, even if we're talking about an open wheel car, I don't think it would cause a car to topple over. Or if a car was already flipping, I think it would almost slow the car down rather than continue it going or make it worse, like regular grass does. So I'm going to upshift on that just because I think it's a good safety move for the tracks to make, and for the safety of the cars.
I think we have our first disagree. I'm going to downshift for now.
Okay.
These are primarily NASCAR tracks. I don't know. There's not that huge of an issue with Indy, but we talk about tri-ovals, cars getting loose off of turn 4 and going in. I want to wait on the Gen 7 car.
Mm-hmm.
Is that car going to have a splitter? Or are we going to have a ride height? So this is a major investment for tracks. When we talk about, now NASCAR owning all their tracks that they own, and SMI owning the tracks that they own, which would be candidates for the synthetic turf. It's a major investment. So I would say downshift for now. What does a Gen 7 car look like? And is that... Because we didn't see these hoods in front ends getting torn up in the old cars like we do now. Because you could spin, you're going to get some damage. But like Chase Elliott, was at the 16. I think it was his first Daytona 500.
Yes,
16
ruined his whole race.
Ruined his car. Of course, and we saw this with the COT. When Carl Edwards won the All-Star race, and he wrecked his car on the celebrating. Those things shouldn't happen. So I'd say wait while I think they're very popular. But from a money standpoint, I would say let's wait and see at least what the car Gen 7 looks like, and let's move on from that. So then we can take it from there. IndyCar has formed a partnership with Red Bull Advanced Technologies to develop a ballistic aeroscreen anchored by a titanium framework, which will be introduced from the start of the 2020 season to reduce the risk of driver injury from debris striking the cockpit area. As far as the design goes, are you shifting up or are you shifting down?
Well, I just wanted to make a note that I completely forgot that IndyCar was supposed to make this happen by 2020, because I kept thinking when the FIA mandated it that it was mainly for like European cars, and I completely didn't even think about IndyCar ever coming up with a halo concept. And it seems weird to me to see an IndyCar with a halo, but I think that this windscreen is the better way for them to go on ovals.
Mm-hmm.
I think that for a series that races on ovals, I think it's much safer to have an aero screen. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and upshift on this because I think that it does look cool, it does look sleek, but it will be interesting to see how it affects drivers, because I think I read somewhere that, when Scott Dixon tested the aero screen the first time, before it had a halo on it, it got very, very hot in the car. It got very, very hot in the cockpit, and I think that that's something that needs to be looked into maybe. Like, maybe can we get some kind of air conditioning system in there to help the drivers deal with that heat? Another thing, obviously, would be looking at it from a safety point of view, is it going to hold up in the event of an accident? Is it going to cause more problems than it fixes? Things like that. I think it'll all come down to testing, so I'm not really sure about it yet, but I am going to upshift into it because I do applaud IndyCar and Red Bull Technologies for taking the initiative to produce a cockpit safety device that actually looks better than the Halo does. Because people can talk about the Halo serving its purpose all they want, but the fact of the matter is it makes the cars look ugly. It looks like a flip-flop. I mean, it's gross. But with this aero screen, it looks like a fighter jet. I'm cool with that. So that's why I'm hesitant to upshift. So if anything, I'm going to upshift into first gear. So I'm not, but that's just where I come from. What do you think?
Upshifting. I like it. I think for the same reasons, Formula One can get away with the Halo. There's less accidents. The biggest chance of an accident is on the start. We saw last year where there was an accident. Leclerc got hit. So in the Halo, and potentially saved his life.
Yeah, I'm not doubting the safety.
So therefore, they can get away with that. They're not going to have as much debris flying around as an IndyCar at a Noble. I like it. This is what I was hoping with when I saw the aero screen. I'm like, I don't know how that's going to do, particularly when these cars are racing close proximity to each other, and
what's it going to do aerodynamically too is going to be the big question.
Yeah, there will be some testing involved, but
they better test this.
Yeah, and we saw, can this help? We saw some blowovers. Can this help in any blowover situation when debris and cars sliding in? So I think this is a good step in the right direction for IndyCar. I'm upshifting, maybe a little higher than you. I like the design. This is what I was hoping we'd have: a screen with something on top to stabilize the screen. And I'm sure they're going to test this thing like with military grade cannons and making sure this thing can withstand some.
They better crash test it first. Too.
I agree. Some crash testing. Hopefully, we'll be in line.
We're going to need someone to purposefully put it in the wall just to see what it does.
Yes. Sunday's Coca-Cola 600. Last upshift, downshift here. You ready?
Yeah. Okay, I'm ready.
We had a number of right front tire failures causing cautions, attrition, and some exciting restarts. Did this make the race more exciting, and therefore should Goodyear bring a more, quote, less durable tire to the racetrack?
Absolutely. That's an upshift for me. Goodyear's needed to do that for a long time. I think that's what really has been... I mean, there's been a number of issues with NASCAR in the past several years when it comes to aero problems, but I think one of the major problems has been Goodyear brings a tire that just flat doesn't degrade. Mm-hmm. And seeing that race on Sunday, I think, combined with the aero package, which, like I said last week, it works great for the mile-and-a-half track. So, you see, I thought it was an overall very competitive and exciting race. Even if I listened to most of it on the radio, it sounded like it was a very, very exciting race.
Visually, I think it was very appealing, or very...
Right, I was able to catch the last restart there, the last couple of restarts, I should say. Not the last restart, but I was able to catch the last, maybe 20, 30 laps of the race. And I was impressed with what I saw. I was impressed with what I saw overall. I think that, that's the kind of NASCAR racing I want to see. And again, the Coca-Cola 600 is still an endurance race, so to see these guys racing that hard at the end of the race, I couldn't have been happier. So I think that's an absolute upshift for me. So I know I've upshifted on all of them so far. I guess I'm more positive. I'm more of a positive person when it comes to these kinds of things. But for me, I just thought, that's what kind of the things that we need to see. We talked about it earlier in the show, where it would behoove Pirelli to make a tire that degraded a lot more. And it worked out for Goodyear there. And so, you can do it in a 78-lap Formula 1 race, and you can do it in a 400-lap NASCAR race. I think it's doable, makes the racing a lot better, makes the strategy a lot better, too.
Yes, it's strategy. Really, I'm upshifting. I've been, past couple Coca-Cola 600s have been good. Tires been lasting. You haven't had cautions, and so I think the one a couple years ago, the only cautions were for stage breaks. Mm-hmm. Well, today we need to have more cautions, more than ever. We maybe didn't need it back in the 90s, but now we need them now. And like you just mentioned, Pirelli needs to make a tire that's less durable for F1. Don't know how much of that's Pirelli and how much of that's Formula 1 and the FIA saying, we need to make these things last.
They need to take their...
But there were 16 cautions yesterday. Okay, and what does DW sometimes like to say? Cautions
breed cautions.
And now that wasn't always the case yesterday, but in the stage 1, first 100 laps, you had Eric Jones, tire failure, like 10 laps in. Then you had Matt DiBenedetto, same thing about lap 45. Leader, Truex, who eventual winner.
I couldn't believe that.
Now he got lucky. The tire failed, and he was able to tap the wall of the exit at turn 4. He got very lucky. But we then saw Denny Hamlin had repeated failures. Now, that's all Toyota camp.
Yeah.
But then you had JT Doherty. They had issues. They had both their cars had problems. And then you had parts where aero played a factor too, and the tires were going away. Sort of the same thing, but the tires do not need to last a full fuel run.
No,
we need to see Coca-Cola 600. We need to see 3 seconds of fall off or more from the start of the run to the end of a fresh tire run. And so I'm upshifting on this all the time because we need cautions, because running around and only having, in most cases, 2 cautions is not necessarily what we need to see right now. And the cars are too easy to drive.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
The tire is the one thing right now that we could change.
Tire management will separate the great drivers from the bad drivers.
I think it was the end of stage 2. Alex Bowman's car, the team had 5 sets left out of the 12 they started with, plus the ones they had on. So they had 11 sets of fresh tires to start the race. They had already used 6 in 2 stages. And a part of that was coming down pit road after the first 3 cautions and getting tires. I'm like, what are these guys doing? This is not smart. So, yeah, it has that another layer of strategy. And these guys who had tires, this is what the Xfinity Series has to go through. They don't have that many tires.
No, yeah.
They had like 4 sets on Saturday. So tire management is important. So let's move into the Coca-Cola 600. Race 3 of Racemas. As you mentioned, it was the 60th running. Byron was the youngest 600 pole winner ever.
I was surprised about that.
Beat another guy who drove the 24.
Jeff Gordon.
Yeah. And we mentioned the early tire troubles. That was a real dominant deal. We were a lot concerned. After the first couple of the Toyota guys were like, what's going on, and why are my teammates and corporate partners crashing? Passing in track position, as it should be, was premium.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that as the race went on. So let's move into like the night part. The bottom lane was really the place to be, and then you slowly migrated up as the run got on. You running the middle and that traction compound stuff, and that was wearing out a little bit to some drivers. Other drivers thought it was sticking in pretty well. So that was a good race to watch. The restarts were entertaining. Chase Elliott tried to wreck it a couple times there off of turn 4. And if this was the 2001 Monte Carlo, I'm sorry, Chase, but you're going around. You're not saving that thing. I was surprised by the durability of some of these cars. We're watching the Xfinity race was drivers only plus Chad, and Harvick, Logano, and Clint were up in the booth, and they were surprised how these guys were able to hit the wall and continue on. And they were saying, we do that Sunday, we're not going to survive. Well, Kyle Larson hit the wall. I thought it was I hit the wall pretty hard there. And he was able to continue. Truex, the eventual winner, as we said, he hit the wall and he was able to continue. So it was good to see that it was probably the most complex race of the year, if that makes sense, with the tire failures, the cars surviving impacts. Keselowski was not able to. He pitted on lap 190 right before the stage break. Had a loose wheel, had to come back in. At lap 204, really didn't regain that track position until he played strategy. But one of the coolest things I want to make sure we talk about, the halftime. And this was really neat. I didn't know how this was going to work, but at the end of stage 2, and this is the only series that can do this. You don't have this in Formula 1, you don't have this in IndyCar. But at the end of stage 2, they bring all the cars down pit road. They stop the cars, turn them off, and they bring out, an ROTC group brought out the Honor and Remember flag, which was what Fox's charity and organization that they were working with this year. And they brought the flag out. They had a 30-second moment of silence. On TV, no one was making a noise. I can't imagine what it was like being at the Charlotte Motor Speedway that night. And the one thing that I think it really solidified it really on TV was the camera work by some of the guys on the ground. Just made it look really, really good. And I know that's a weird thing to point out, but that's what to me was a really good aspect of this. So I applaud NASCAR for doing that, and just taking time saying, hey, there's something bigger going on tomorrow than what we're doing here right now, and that's what allows us to do this. So I applaud NASCAR for that. What were your thoughts on the 600?
My thoughts on the 600 overall was that it was a pretty good race. I mean, it was above average for what I expected it to be.
I think it's better than a lot of people thought.
Yeah. For a race that literally goes on for about almost 4 hours.
4 hours and 50 minutes.
Yeah, so almost 5 hours, an endurance race like that, to still put on kind of a really good show towards the end and throughout most of the night, I think is a really good sign. I think NASCAR swings and misses on a lot of things, but I think the last couple of races we've seen have been knocked out of the park.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that tire degradation is going to be a way better thing because, like Kyle Busch says, he hates driving these cars. Yeah. I mean, because when you're driving a car that's just flat out to the throttle and all you can rely on is the draft and not anything else, it can be very frustrating. It can get very frustrating because you think you're doing everything you can in the car and you're just not making up spots. And I see that with Kyle Busch all the time. I don't even blame him for being upset about a lot of these packages, but I think a lot of those issues that Kyle Busch mentions can be alleviated with a tire that degrades more.
That and a little bit of aero change, too. The corner speeds are up. I think some guys were going just about full out. They weren't doing it at the beginning when the sun was out and on the track. But as the race went on and with the sun is set, it's dark, they were about full throttle through the corners, and that's not good. We need to have slower corner speeds, faster straightaway speeds. Yeah,
I would prefer to see a package come back here where they at least have to breathe the throttle going into the turns, because I think that's what something that makes Charlotte so difficult. And I know that my experience as a driver only comes from running simulators, but I think that that's something that makes Charlotte a lot of fun to drive. Is when you're driving in one of those simulators, you're hitting about 190, 195 going down the front and back straightaways, and then you gotta let off the throttle, breathe it for just a few seconds going into the first corner before you pick up the throttle again. And that's something that I think can really, really separate the men from the boys, because it's how brave are you to pick up the throttle faster than the guy in front?
Exactly.
How brave are you to maybe wait a little bit longer to breathe the throttle so that you can get a better run off the corner?
Absolutely.
Things like that. I think those are some of the things that I'd like to see return to NASCAR, because
Hopefully
I think
the Gen 7 car.
Yeah, I think the Gen 7 should alleviate a lot of that, especially if there's not. Bob Pockrass tweeted something this morning, or it was yesterday or today, where he talked about, there's some serious conversation about either using the splitter and pan that they use at the Coca-Cola 600, or just doing away with it altogether for the Gen 7.
They need to get rid of the splitter. The splitter, I think, there's too much air on that nose to keep
Absolutely.
these cars sucked to the ground. They need to get these cars about
being able
what's
to
the ride
height
height rule?
heights,
Like a 5x5 rule back in 98 or something.
Yeah.
That they need to. I need to see not the car sucked to the ground. I need to be able to see air go in sunlight underneath that car.
I think the splitter is like the least popular aspect of the car.
Hashtag
unanimously.
Bring back the valence.
I mean, unanimously, engineers, crew chiefs, drivers, fans, all unanimously hate the splitter, and the only group of people that stands by it is NASCAR for some reason.
And if they're taking in, they say they like to take in input from everybody, and when everyone they're taking input is saying, Get
rid of this darn thing.
Splitter, and they're sticking with it. It's not. Come on, man.
If we get rid of the splitter, it completely negates the conversation we had earlier about converting the grass to artificial turf. We don't even need to do that then.
Yeah.
We don't even need to make that kind of an investment. But I still think it's a good thing for safety.
Yes.
But that's the thing. That's the thing. I think the Coca-Cola 600 overall was a good show, and it showed us that NASCAR can still put on good races when the stars align, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
The problem is they've changed this car so much, and the same thing with the COT. They can't find a package that they like and it works.
Yeah, there's way too much change.
The 14, what was ever wrong with the 14 package? I don't know, but they thought there was a problem. One thing I wanted to make a mention of, though, that bothered me extremely was when David Reagan stays out in the 19 on the last restart. They stay out track position. They've been around the top 15 all day long. Had a really good run for that Front Row Motorsports team, and they stay out. Everyone else comes down. Ryan Newman takes 2. So those 2 are the front row cars. To start the restart the race, David Reagan's the control car. The 19 team has the audacity to ask them, "Are you dropping to the back?" And I was thinking, hold on a second. There's a really simple way to solve this. Are you going to walk up and ask a Team Penske car, "Are you going to drop to the back when they stay out?" No. There is a major disrespect for that front row team, that 19 team. I've said this not on the show because it's only 2 hours. It was long. I think there's somewhat of a cultural issue with Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing in some instances, and I think this was one of them, that they had the audacity to go and ask a mid-pack team, who, by the way, always has their car sponsored.
That is true. That is very true.
All 3 cars this year have always had a sponsor. They've grown to 3 cars this year. The front row is built up the past few seasons, and they have a couple of victories. Granted, I think one of them was rain delay at Pocono.
But they did win
Talladega on merit. They won Talladega on merit. You're right. So this team did not deserve that respect. I don't know how me as a crew chief or a car chief would have handled that. I might have taken him and shoved him someplace that he probably wouldn't have liked. So I was mad. Those last 5 laps, I was thinking, I'm pissed off now, and I've been happy for the last 395 laps.
I'm so glad I didn't even know about that. I was listening to it on the radio. They didn't even mention that.
Oh, it was. Well, the TV brought it up and played the audio from the crew chief, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. And I won't go on to it because I could rant about that for a while. It was just utter disrespect from the 19 team to go up there and ask the 38 team, "Are you dropping to the back?" I get it. The restarts were kind of crazy. We don't know how no tires are going to act. 4 tires behind. But here's the thing. Tires have mattered that race. Get around and find a way.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. And unfortunately, he did finish. He's finished outside the top 10. Did drift back those last 5 laps. But the point is, they took a shot. And that was a shot to win the race. So, outstanding performance. Rob, who do you have?
My outstanding performance of the day is definitely, and I think one of the more deserving ones that I don't think is going to get nearly as enough credit as they deserve, but Pippa Mann, and not just Pippa Mann, but Clausen Marshall Racing in general.
Yes.
I don't think I have... It's been a very, very, very long time since a USAC team has brought a car to the Indianapolis 500. And I got the wonderful opportunity on Media Day to sit down and have a chat with Pippa Mann and talk about how all of that came together. And it was really, really inspiring to see how, Pippa was sitting... If you read... I posted the story on my Twitter page, so if you want to look for it, you can find it. Pippa Mann pretty much sat there and said, I thought this was the last time I was ever going to have a chance. She said, this is it for me. I'm a one-off driver. I didn't make the race. This is it. I'm done. So while she was on race day basically taking care of sponsors that were really upset that they didn't have a car in the race, she essentially was pulled over by Tim Clausen, who asked her point blank, I don't want to see this happen to you again. If I bring my sprint car team to the race next year, will you be my driver? And she said, of course. And so then they started working this partnership together. Pippa started working, day in and day out on finding sponsorship to get this program up off the ground. And they ended up doing it. And they ended up qualifying them for the race. They didn't have to worry about running the last row shootout.
Which is a victory in itself.
Yeah, they were faster than Carlin, they were faster than Sage Karam, they were faster than James Hinchcliffe, and they were faster than Fernando Alonso. That's impressive to me. And then they go out there and keep the race. Pippa goes out there and drives a very, very clean race. I mean, and it was a quiet race for her. But I think that's fine.
Yeah.
She didn't need to be
that's
up there.
That's how sometimes you finish well, having a quiet race.
She was having a quiet race. She didn't go a lap down. Pit strategy was fine. She was making good power. Even though Chevrolet Power was not doing very well on fuel mileage, Pippa was saving fuel. She was able to pit later than a lot of other Chevrolet drivers. I thought that she did probably one of the best races I had seen out of a single car team that was brand new at Indianapolis gosh, I can't even think of a time that I've seen that before. And maybe there has been, I just haven't thought of it lately, but I just was very, very impressed with her. And not just her overall ability behind the wheel of a race car, but also the team's ability to essentially... Pippa said basically she and Tim Clausen went out and personally looked for engineers that would be willing to help on this, and the majority of those engineers worked on sports car programs. Nice. So they didn't even have experience running Indy cars, and they still put together a program
very impressive.
That was good enough to make the race. So even though she finished 16th, she had her best finish ever at Indianapolis, and she did it with a team that, quite honestly, shouldn't have ever done it. That's my outstanding performance. I know it's easy to give it to Simon Pagenaud just because of how good he was, but Pippa Mann gets my call from that. So how about you? Who do you pick for your outstanding performance of the weekend?
Well, I tried to look. There's a number of people I could have chosen. Obviously, Truex having damage to his car and winning was one of them. Hamilton holding off Verstappen in extremely old tires that weren't supposed to last that long in the fashion that they did. But I chose something that was a little weird. And it was the skill of the IndyCar drivers and their spotters to avoid the wreck there at the end.
Oh,
and it just shows,
right. That's true.
And it just shows, the drivability that these guys have and the talent. And I was really zoned in on Santino Ferrucci and James Hinchcliffe. Ferrucci might have had a little less luck than Hinchcliffe in this situation, but he had the awareness and the smart to go low and gas it through the grass and continue on and use the pit access turn lanes to avoid that wreck. Hinchcliffe, his spotter's like, I can't remember what his spotter's saying now, but like low, middle, something like that, and then the cars part and he goes through, but
looked like the parting of the seas, quite literally there.
It could have been more than a 5-car pileup.
Yeah.
But the skill of those drivers, the heads up by the spotters, so that's always good to see. Seeing 2 cars crash, 1 car crash is enough. But when you see all these other cars sliding in and getting collected, it can turn bad real quick. So their heads up and their talent just shows how again, I said the word again, talented these guys are up on the spotter stand and then driving the car. So that is that's my outstanding.
It should be noted that Ferrucci finished 7th, and that was his first ever oval race.
That's true.
Never raced an oval before. And as much as I got beef with the guy for last year at Silverstone, I don't want to go into that right now, but dude impressed me.
How many people would have said that the highest finishing rookie would have been Ferrucci at the end of the day, because you had Herta who had Herta.
I had Herta doing that all the way.
99% of people had Herta. Yeah. Okay, Las Vegas had Herta. Yeah. So I mean, you had Rosenquist and Ericsson all run issues. I think everyone had issues. All the other rookies had issues. So I tweeted about that and this that I think these guys were the outstanding performances of that race, and I was just impressed after how many times I saw the replay. So Ferrucci, hats off to him and that team. So, all right, on to our last main segment here, the featured racetrack. We're featuring Nazareth Speedway.
Yeah, we're going in on here, so we got about 10 or so minutes. So let's talk about Nazareth real quick, because I think it's a very important thing to discuss real quick.
Yeah, so just a little bit on it. It operated from 1910 to 2004. The grounds, anyways, originally was a half-mile dirt oval, which they added a 1 1/8 dirt mile. It was built in 1966. Roger Penske bought the grounds in 1986, and he sold off the grounds that contained the half-mile dirt oval to a grocery store, which actually that store still stands today. He built the paved oval, which was little less than a mile in length over on the site of the former, now 1 1/8 mile dirt oval. That's a lot of mileage there. But the main part is the track that most of us remember it as was built in 1986. It was originally named Pennsylvania International Raceway. It was named Nazareth in 1993. It was one of the 4 tracks that Roger Penske owned, the others being Michigan Auto Club Speedway, which was back then was California Speedway in North Carolina. He sold those 4 tracks to International Speedway Corporation in the merger. The track was closed following the 2004 season. Despite that, it was actually included in some EA Sports NASCAR games in years that followed. All the way up through NASCAR 09 if you had the PS2 version, not the PS3 version.
I've got the PS2 version over there.
There you go. there are clauses after it was sold in 2015 that prevents the racing to return to the facility, which is extremely sad. It's just one of those. One thing with me in racetracks and schedules, uniqueness. I like to see uniqueness, diversity in markets and in tracks. And Nazareth was that. It hosted 17 Xfinity races from 1988 to 2004, 6 truck races from 1996 to 2001. 15 kart races from 87 to 2001, and then 3 IndyCar races from 2002 to 2004. Tim Fedewa and Ron Hornaday were the only Xfinity drivers to repeat as winners there. Ron Hornaday has a 3rd win there in the Truck Series. Jack Sprague was the only Truck Series driver to repeat. Emerson Fittipaldi won there 3 times. Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy won there twice. And Dan Weldon won the last major race there on August 29th, 2004, when he beat Tony Kanaan by 3.5 seconds. And that is your featured racetrack.
It will also be known that Scott Dixon scored his first win there. The last kart race that was held there in 2001, Scott Dixon driving for, I believe, Pat Patrick. I think it was Pat Patrick. I can't remember who Dixon was driving for at that time, but he scored his first win, and if he hadn't have done that, I don't think it would have caught the eye of Chip Ganassi, because the very next year when Dixon lost his ride in kart, Chip Ganassi personally opened up another car just for Dixon. And that was a moment that really springboarded Dixon's career. And I think if that race had not happened, or if Dixon had not won that race, we could have been looking at a very different future for IndyCar, for Chip Ganassi. But Nazareth, always one of my favorite racetracks. It's heartbreaking to see it in the condition that it is in right now.
If you haven't read the article that Jim Aiello did with
Mario Andretti,
you need to read that. It's a really great piece, and a lot of different aspects hit in it.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up too, because I think more people need to understand how important Nazareth was to a lot of people. It was a great racetrack. It hosted a lot of historic events. The kart, the IRL races there.
There was also many NASCAR feeder series that raced there as well, just too many to include. There's a very sad, and I thought that would be a good one to mention with the Andretti connection. And we miss it, and like I said, diversity, and
we're not the only
different
people
markets.
Who miss it.
Oh, no, definitely not. To touch on last week, we mentioned the Indiana State Fairgrounds. I was there. Awesome race.
Yeah.
We had a couple reminders about how dangerous this sport can be, but the race was great, an excellent finish.
Yeah, Chris Windham had some bad accidents.
He had a bad 24 hours.
Gosh.
But Tyler Courtney goes out there and passes Kevin Thomas Jr., who definitely had to be disappointed after he led, I forget how many laps. I was like 82 maybe?
That was an all-star lineup of drivers.
It's a great lineup of drivers.
Holy cow.
So hopefully it's not the last race there at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. Hopefully some things change. Great crowd. Didn't have enough concession stands open. I think the fairgrounds either underestimated. I don't know who pays for that, but someone underestimated something on that front.
I want my beer.
There was 14,000 seats, just under 14,000 seats, I think, in the Hoosier Lottery Grandstand there. I don't think there was more than a few hundred that were empty from my perspective.
You're not going to get that many people to go see a chariot race. I'm sorry.
Yep.
They're messing. They're not going to get that many people to come see a chariot race. They need to do something about that.
So hopefully, you weren't around to see it live. Hopefully, you may watch it on USAC Racing.
I caught several clips of the event. I was very sad I was unable to be there. I really, really wanted to be there, but circumstances prevented me from going. It looked like it was a perfect event. It was like the perfect way to send off the event, even though I think everybody who went to that race really probably hoped that it wasn't the last. And I think that a lot of the drivers hoped that it wasn't the last too. I think there'll be a big push here to prevent that track from going away.
Yeah. All right, so our final segment, what's in the windshield? And the NTT IndyCar Series visits Detroit Belle Isle circuit for their Chevrolet duels.
I love that. I love doubleheader weekends in IndyCar. I wish we still did it at Toronto.
Yeah. NASCAR travels to Pocono with the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series and the Xfinity Series. So last year in Detroit for the IndyCar Series, Dixon won race 1, Hunter-Reay won race 2. What are your predictions this year? Huh?
I'm going to have to say that I think at least one of the winners is going to be Sebastian Bourdais. I think Bourdais he's won there in the past. He's traditionally been very good on that Detroit track. Not just in general street courses, obviously. He's got 4 Champ Car championships. I mean, we all know how good Bourdais is. I think he's going to be driving a little bit mad because I think he knew that he should have finished a lot better. He made a mistake late in the race and he pinched Graham Rahal when he shouldn't have. And I think he knows that. Rahal knew that. I think Bourdais is going to come out of the gates, kind of just angry, wanting to rebound because I think Bourdais has a better car than he lets on than he showed last week at Indianapolis. And I'm going to pick Sebastian Bourdais to win that race at Detroit. As for NASCAR, I think that a Hendrick car is finally going to break away. I know that the Gibbs domination has been happening, and I know that the Kevin Harvick and the Ford camp, Stuart Haas has been, they're the hot guys to win races, but I think that Chase Elliott's going to get the win. I think he is good at Pocono. I think Hendrick Motorsports has traditionally been good at Pocono as well. They swept in, I believe,
5 straight at one point.
So I think they're gonna get back on the ball. I think they've been struggling a little bit this first couple of weeks, but I think they've come together really well the last couple of weeks.
Chevrolet
in general. I mean, Hendrick struggled at the beginning of the year, but they've still managed to be fast, put cars on the pole, and I think track position is really important at Pocono. And so as a result, I think if they qualify up front, I think it's going to be a Hendrick car, but my Hendrick car is going to be Chase Elliott. So how about you?
I think Alexander Rossi wants redemption not only for the Indy 500 but for the Detroit last year. I think he let one slip away.
Yeah.
So Rossi he had a lot of things to be disappointed about following the 500. He was mad at Oriol Servia. How he failed to talk about that is one thing, but that was quite a performance with the hand gesture.
If you read my summary on the Indianapolis Star on Monday, you'll see my quote for Oriol Servia was, the most interesting thing that happened to Servia today was having Alexander Rossi wave his fist at him while he passed him.
Yeah.
And outside of that, Servia did absolutely nothing in that race. But, hey, I heard some rumors here and there that Servia might be coming back full-time sometime in the future. I just heard that on the radio, so don't quote me on that. But I'll tell you the actual source of that if you want me to later on. But anyway, let's get back to more what you were talking about.
So I think Rossi will win at least one, and the Hondas have been good there recently. And on the Chevrolet race, I think Chevy will definitely want to kind of.
Chevrolet will want to look better.
It's Penske's kind of not really Penske's home race, but Penske was a big push to bring it back. Yeah, it's Chevy's. Right there, they're looking at the skyline of Detroit.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Rossi, I think, is going to spoil it, and that's going to be my pick there. Pocono. I think we said this last week. It's tough to not go with the Penske Fords or the JGR Toyotas, but Stewart Haas Racing has a victory lane, and it's going to end this week with Kevin Harvick. Harvick's not only going to bust into victory lane for Stewart Haas for the first time this year, but he's going to win his first Cup race at Pocono and check that box off. He won there in the Truck Series back in 2011, driving his own truck. Mm-hmm. And he's come close a couple times here recently. He's hungry, and he's had a couple good starts to races this year, but he hasn't finished. He's going to put a complete race together, or at least run well at the end enough to win at the Pocono here. And it's important to note, too, Pocono 2020, going to be a doubleheader.
That's true, that's right. So 1 year from now, we're going to be racing 2 races.
A little more than a year, we're going to have 2 races. So this is the second to last single race weekend for Pocono. With the
At
Cup
least for
Series.
now. I don't know what they're going to do with that 2021 schedule.
Yeah,
but
we'll see. I imagine it probably stays the same.
Well, if it's a success, it might.
Yeah.
It might.
Well, it depends on when the 2021 schedule comes out. When they're going to pull it out there. So, in reviewing last week,
I picked the Carpenter cars.
Yeah.
Ed finished 6th.
Yeah.
But they were really non-factors most of that race.
Yeah, and I picked Elio to win, which I'm like, crap.
I picked him actually pre-race because we made those predictions way before I even see Carb Day. So I changed my prediction to Elio on the pre-race, and then I kind of regret doing that because I still think I would have been better off sticking with Carpenter. But
and then you picked. Who did you pick in the Cup Series? You picked Harvick.
I did pick Kevin Harvick, yes.
And I was lucky enough. I picked Truex. I was thinking the same thing. Like both my guys have issues. So maybe this week both of us will well, we both
Hopefully
can't
we'll do better this week.
Someone will win.
Hopefully Bourdais or Rossi pull it off.
yeah. Or at least finish 1-2, right?
Right, yeah.
So, well, that will do it for episode 2 of the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. Hope you enjoyed the show. And join us next week as we talk about the IndyCar dual races in Detroit and the NASCAR weekend in Pocono. We will soon have a Twitter account for this podcast. We are waiting on the logo. I didn't want to do this halfway, so we're going to get the logo finalized and sent back to us. Then we'll have a Twitter account for that. But in the meantime, and as always, even after, follow Rob at rpeters33. That's the @ symbol RPEETERS33. And of course, you can follow myself, Josh, at roller_01 at ROLLER_01. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening. For Rob Peters, I'm Josh Roller, and this was the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast.